trouble. Welcome to Jim Does SuperCoach, NFL SuperCoach Week 9 wrap, Week 10 look ahead. And as we all expected in Week 9, Caleb Williams caught 2 passes, 1 for a touchdown, and is the best player in SuperCoach this week, along with Brock Bowers. Sure. Whoa, boy, what a week it was. Week 9 had some pretty big scores also. It was a bit of devastation across some of the running back position. I'll tell you what. Anyway, we'll get into that in a second. I finished with a 470 this week. Top 16% finish. Not quite good enough. Was really let down. Get to this in a second. By my 2 QBs. And of course, a lot of the top running backs struggled. I copped a lot of that. And not helped by Roma Dunze, which I'll get to later as well. But I still moved up because this is the thing with NFL SuperCoach. In the overall rankings, I'm 431st overall. Top 1%. Feels pretty good. This is the problem, I mean, with the sort of rank changes week on week. If you've got players that other players didn't have, if some of those other PODs don't hit, you can still move up as other ones slip down. So, top 16% finish for me this week. Top 1% still overall, 431. The week 9 average score was 412, which I think means that the middle average was pretty chunky for the simple fact of all these running backs struggling, the wide receivers, a couple of teams on bye, but I mean, the top 5% average was 553, so they did okay. I'm just saying. The trades this week, I mean, having not made any this week, I kept my powder dry. That worked out okay, which is all right. It was just sort of more that really across the board, some of the big names didn't deliver. So we'll get to that. The big story, that might be actually the big story. That aside from injuries, a lot of the RBs, you know, the big name ones, really struggling. Injuries is the other one, obviously. Jayden Daniels dislocates his elbow. Tucker Kraft does an ACL. Travis Hunter went on to IR back on Saturday. So, bit of a tough one. And we've also had the trade deadline come and go. Not a massive amount of movement in terms of some of the skill position players that have SuperCoach ramifications. But you got Jacoby Myers going to the Jags. Pretty interesting-ish, with Brian Thomas Jr. dealing with an ankle injury. Hunter on IR. Diami Brown also out at the moment. So, I don't know, maybe Myers gets a few more targets with Trevor Lawrence throwing in the ball rather than Geno Smith. And Raheed Shaheed goes to Seattle, which doesn't really impact JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba, the best wide receiver in football right now. Because, I mean, this is more, you know, impacts the likes of Horton and go like that, the next tier down. But there you go. That's it. The best this week at every position, as we do each week here on Jim Does SuperCoach. A quick whip around of what happened in week 9. Your QBs, Caleb Williams, as I mentioned, 74 points. He was massive. Joe Flacco ends up with 65. No coinkydink that those two teams were playing against each other. I'm just saying. That game was psycho. It was crazy. Justin Herbert comes up next. My beloved Herbs with 57. Josh Allen had 56. He's got another really good matchup this week. Sam Darnold had 56, just slanging that thing against Washington. 54 for Matt Stafford, 54 for Jackson Dart. A really interesting name still, just because, I mean, without any position weapons, he's still running a lot and getting plenty of points. Geno Smith had 53. Sure, that's because he just kept finding Brock Bowers time and time again. Lamar finishes with 50 in his comeback game, and 48 for Jacoby Brissett. Pretty good stuff. To sort of, you know, other big ones, you've got obviously Michael Penix with 44, Trevor Lawrence 43, JJ McCarthy returned and had 39. Love that for my bench. 38 for Bo Nix, 38 for Goff, 34 for Drake May, 33 for Danny Dimes, 32 for Dak and Jayden. For the running backs, now this is where just blood all over the floor. Just every team has been murdered at this point, apart from by Christian McCaffrey, 63 points. Love that for him against the Giants. Rico Dowdle goes bang with 54. He is clearly just stamping his position as the RB1 for Carolina as they stomped somehow over that Packers defense to a win. Kyle Monongai for the Bears, he had 42. He looked unreal with no DeAndre Swift out there. Josh Jacobs, like the drop-off is pretty dramatic. He gets to 35 up against the Carolina defense that got gashed by James Cooks last week. So there you go. Kyron Williams, 34. 34 for Genty. 32 for Jalen Warren. Chase Brown had 30. We're getting to the end of the top 10. We've got RJ Harvey with 28 and Bijan with 27. We'll get to the stinkers in a second. For the wide receiver, actual good players this week, it was 68 for Drake London. He had 3 touchdowns against my Pats. He crushed it. Luckily, I still had him on. I had him on field, and basically the decision became between putting Rome Odunze or Nico Collins on the bench. Rome dropping a big fat 0. Just saying, did not play. He played. We'll get to that. T. Higgins, 59. He was the big beneficiary in that Bears-Bengals game. Chase was good, but never got the touchdown to push his score massive. Devontae Adams had 2 touchdowns. He had 41. DJ Moore had 41 as well for the Bears. 38 for Puka Nacua. I had the captaincy on him this week. Didn't quite pay off. Would have been nice to have it on Drake, just saying. Marvin Harrison had 38. Torrey Horton, the aforementioned Torrey Horton of the Seattle Seahawks, 37. Demario Pop Douglas had 36. JSN with 35. And Rashee Rice, 33, despite Patrick Mahomes not throwing a touchdown. Not bad. Jamar Chase ends up on the 28. As for the tight ends, Brock Bowers headlines everybody because he had 74. Massive comeback. He looks healthy. He looks awesome. Off he goes. 53 for Colston Loveland. Love that. Dalton Kincaid at 38. Laporta 37. Mark Andrews 30. Trey McBride looked very good. Didn't quite have the sheer target share because Marvin Harrison Jr. was really good, but 28 for him. Kelsey 21, Schultz 21, John Johnson 21, rounding out the top 10 of Pat Frymouth and Theo Johnson with 20. I actually had Frymouth on the bench, I think, this week because Tyler Warren was a bit stinky. Talk about that in a second. So, the kickers and the defenses. The kickers, it was Kaimi Fairbairn with 36, 30 for Cam Little, 24, which is like Cam Little kicks a 68-yard field goal, sets the record and ends up with 30. Come on, man. 34 for Eddie Pinheiro, 24 for Badgley on the Colts. Like the only sort of remaining cash cow kicker at the moment. And Dick of the kicker, Will Reichard, Santos, and Evan McPherson all with 22. And 20s to round out with Boswell and Ryland. Yeah. Kickers, it's just such a weird week-on-week mess, isn't it? And defense special teams, though. As obviously we all predicted, the Titans. Top score. What? No, that's not how it works. Yeah. They scored their first 2 touchdowns off defense and special teams, so not bad. 40 for them, 36 for the Steelers in a surprisingly excellent outing for them against the Colts. 30 for the Ravens, not a surprise they're going against the Dolphins. 24 for the Cards against Dallas, just Dak kept throwing them the ball. 20 for the Falcons. They did a very, very solid job limiting the Pats, but they still lost. Rams 18, Lions 18, Seahawks 18, Panthers 18, and Vikes 14. So it's sort of like, cool, if your defense scores, you're going over around that sort of 24-30 mark. If you don't, yeah, you get sort of stuck. So the biggest surprises overall for the week, obviously, Drake London and Brock Bowers, massive, massive, massive weeks. The Pats defense isn't that bad. Drake London was just bigger than all of them. He just kept grabbing touchdowns. It was crazy. And Brock Bowers, 3 touchdowns as well, right? So the 2 of those guys have 3 touchdowns each. Off they go. McCaffrey looked really good. A receiving touchdown and a rushing touchdown helped his score for 63. Higgins is a big surprise at 59. Dart, 54. He's just keeping on, keeping on. Rico Dowdle is probably the other one for your running back room. 54. He's priced 16.9 mil. So that's more than like Javonte Williams now and stuff like that. So Colston Loveland finally having his big breakout game helped a lot. 53 for him, including the game-winning massive 56-yard touchdown. Very nice. Really, Kyle Monongai, 42 for the Bears. This just tells me if we're going up against the Bengals, just load up. Right? The defense is fighting with the offense. It's absolutely crazy there. The big spuds this week. Spud of the week. How about all of the top running backs that aren't named Christian McCaffrey? Seriously, Jonathan Taylor, 12 points. Brutal. Jahmyr Gibbs, 8 points. Javonte Williams, 13. Even Bijan managed to only get to 23. The Pats hold running backs to fewer than 50 rushing yards a game again. But Bijan had enough catches that he got to 23. No Saquon on a bye. Derrick Henry had 24. Achane had 26. Essentially, your big name running backs really struggled this week. Just in terms of like running backs overall, if you look at the ones that are like mostly owned, Ashton Genty actually had the 34. 49.5% of owners still have him in their team. So that was kind of good if you sort of kept the faith. Not entirely sure what would have been going on. Trevion Henderson managed 21. Went up a little bit in price. But otherwise, Amari Hampton still owned by 28.6% of owners, hasn't played for a month. And outside of that, it's just pretty tough. Bucky Irving might be back this week. He's still in 8.2% of teams, but otherwise, very, very tough week for the running backs, wasn't it? Outside of that, I mean, Tyler Warren had 10 points. Tet McMillan had 13. Tyler Loop had 8. These are the most owned players in SuperCoach that really sort of disappointed. Chase only had the 28 against Chicago because Higgins went off. You think Chase would have gotten in for 1 touchdown, so the 28's a little bit of a letdown. The Pats defense only managed 2 points against Atlanta. They're owned by 36% of coaches. I think I've got the Pats as well, but I sat them in favor of the Lions, who, despite losing, still scored okay for us. Matthew Golden, 3 points. Tucker Kraft, 6 points before he goes out as well. How about Rome Odunze, as I mentioned, right? 0 points. It did not play. He did play. He just did not catch a ball. Led the team with 80 snaps, usually a 12% target share, 0 receptions, which actually saves us because if you had him on field, you got the auto emergency basically as it went right. He didn't play, didn't get any targets, didn't get any receptions. See ya. Like, that's just kind of how that one goes sometimes. So kind of actually worked in your favor that he didn't get any actual receptions in the end in a game that was 47-42. Like, it still boggles my mind that Odunze wasn't able to absolutely carve up that Bengals defense. Instead, it sort of went everywhere else but Rome Odunze, who was targeted, I think, 3 times and had 0 catches. Absolutely crazy. So out of all of this, out of the spuds, out of the biggest results of the weekend, what are the biggest worries? Obviously, all of your Washington Commanders. So Jayden Daniels goes out with that horrible-looking elbow injury. His left arm, thankfully not his throwing arm, but still he's out for a very long time. That means Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin, the running backs. They'll have Marcus Mariota out there. He was solid-ish for a game or two while Jayden Daniels was out already. But still, otherwise, it just is pretty brutal. And I guess trying to figure out week on week what Green Bay are going to do, like all of their pass catchers. Christian Watson had like a moment early on. Tucker Kraft goes out. I think we'll get to this in the cash cows, but I mean, Tucker Kraft going out is just brutal. But I mean, now it's Luke Musgrave time, I guess. But really, the biggest worries were this week. We had some really interesting, great-looking schedule matchups, especially for our SuperCoach. We knew that Bijan might struggle, but Jonathan Taylor, you're sort of thinking, all right, the Steelers' defense has been very slipshod. They were fantastic against the Colts this week. You also had Derrick Henry didn't just snap, like he had a lot of rushing yards, but he never got into the end zone, which is kind of the biggest problem with your running backs in SuperCoach. Like they can have 100 yards, but the score will only really get massive if they're getting into that end zone. Up against the Miami team that had been gashed on the ground, that Derrick Henry didn't get in, I don't know. But the other running backs, I mean, just sort of struggling. You could explain away a little bit of it. Javonte Williams in game script, JT, obviously McCaffrey being really good. Gibbs just being, that entire Detroit offense being absolutely shut down by a division foe in Minnesota while they're at home in Detroit was just a bit of a head scratcher. So that's a bit of a worry, but Detroit will now turn around and take on Washington, which you feel a lot better about. So I'm not too worried about that. Cash cows for this week, QBs, it's Jacoby Brissett. Looks like he's going to be the starter again this week as well. It just feels like the Cardinals trust him. He's got a break even of minus 23. He already went up 4.3 million from 7 to 11. I mean, if you're sort of looking for that super duper cheap option who is just going to be solid, fine. Jacoby's there. He has the job, fine. JJ McCarthy, if you held the faith like I did, had him on my bench, didn't mind having that roving 0 while he was there. It was like either trade him out for Jackson Dart, which would have made you a lot of cash at this point, like 13 mil. But JJ McCarthy already just copped a $3.6 million price rise, up to 7.3 mil. His break even is minus 8. He plays Baltimore this week. That Ravens defense has looked a lot better the last round or two. We'll see what happens, but I'm happy having JJ McCarthy as my backup to the point where can I put him on field to replace Dak Prescott for myself this week? I don't know. We'll get to that later in the trade section. Tyler Shuck, he had to break even a minus 8 going into this week. Heading into next week, only 4 mil. If you need a super duper cheapie, that's fine, I guess. He's also just not very good. And there are like kind of cash cowy ones. Caleb Williams, who's the one I might be looking at to going down from Dak Prescott to. Break even of 1 could easily jump over 20 million from his price right now in very, very, very short order. Caleb, though, the problem is you're just like, okay, was that just like the fun fashion the flash flash in the pan, or is it going to be like a spot where suddenly he's, really, really super roll gold solid? He's 18.3 mil. The break even of 1 this week. I mean, if you sort of extrapolate that, it means he'll probably go up. If he's like half decent this round, he'll probably go up another 1.5, 2 mil. They're playing the Giants. So you feel okay about that for Caleb. They then take on Minnesota, which is a bit more interesting. But by that point, he's over 20 mil. I don't know. Don't mind the Caleb one if you're going to sort of downgrade one of these top running backs. With Jayden Daniels going out, Jalen Hurts sort of being a weird week-to-week prospect. Don't know. The running back cash cows, RJ Harvey just keeps sort of just doing the RJ Harvey roller coaster. Sounds like the worst roller coaster at Disney, but still, break even to -20 now. He's only at 10.7 mil. And I guess the cool thing is the Denver Broncos play the Raiders on a short week at home. So RJ Harvey's not a bad option this week at 10.7 mil. Isaiah Davis solid for the Jets, break even at -13 at 4.5 mil. They kept Breece Hall though this week, so who knows what's going to happen there. Rodriguez for Washington, 5.6 mil, break even at -8. That's just a bit of a mess, that backfield though. But I mean, he will go up in price. I feel like the best one though is obviously Cole Monongai. Like if DeAndre Swift comes back this week, that obviously puts a bit of a lid on what Monongai can get you, but he looked fantastic this week. Break even to -3 at 7.9 mil. I would just be cautious about the DeAndre Swift situation and what Monongai could actually be asked to do next week. So DeAndre Swift, look, had been doing a pretty solid job for the Bears, and now Monongai's kind of there. He might actually take some of those carries, I guess, from Swift, but just saying, like, Monongai was really good. So maybe the Bears just end up going with him. Breece Hall is -4 as well. Break even at 12 mil. Interesting look the rest of the season, but the Jets are just so hard to judge. Wide receivers, Torrey Horton has got that break even of -19 at 7.3 mil. But I mean, just getting Raheed Shaheed in there next to JSN probably puts a cap on him. Cam and Tez Johnson on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming off their bye. 3.7 mil for Cam, 7.8 with a break even to 2 for Tez. Hard to sort of trust both of them with Ibuka still there for the Bucks with a bye, under the belt. We don't know what the situation is with Mike Evans and his broken collarbone and concussion, obviously out for a while. Tez is interesting-ish, but they play the Pats this week. I don't know about that Bucks team. Demario Pop Douglas, I mentioned him earlier, break even to -4 now, 7.5 mil. There was no Keyshawn Booty for the Pats this week, so a bit boom or bust, I think, for Pop Douglas. DJ Moore and Troy Franklin are pretty interesting. DJ Moore, both of them around 10 mil. Both of them have a break even of -5. Do you trust the Bears this week to get the ball to DJ Moore more and more and more? More. How do you like it? Because, I mean, the Giants secondary is eminently throwable on. DJ Moore's pretty interesting. Franklin still feels very boom or bust. 14 mil for Michael Pittman. Break even to 6. Marvin Harrison, break even of 6. Probably prefer Harrison, but they play Seattle this week. Harrison's only 10.5 mil. Pittman plays Atlanta. They're in Germany. The Atlanta secondary was pretty good against the Pats this week. I don't know. Probably steer clear of both of them. Out of all of them, DJ Moore probably feels like the best going up against the Giants. Tight ends, Loveland at 6.2 mil. He's got a break even to -29. Looks pretty good there for Chicago. Again, up against the Giants this week, feeling good. Brock Bowers, his break even is -14. It's going to be the cheapest we can get Brock Bowers in for a long time. 13.7 mil. I mean, they do play the Denver Broncos this week on a short week. That just might mean they give it to Genty and Brock Bowers even more. That Raiders team just looks abysmal. So I don't know. The big question will be whether you can get Bowers in, see what we do from there. And I don't know. He looked absolutely fantastic again, though, didn't he? Gadsden, 11 mil, break even to 14. Mason Taylor on the Jets has got a break even to 2 at 6.2 mil. But the big one is obviously Tucker Kraft going out. Keep an eye on Luke Musgrave. He's dirt cheap, 3.6 mil. He has been playing, but I mean, it's like the sort of second fiddle tight end there on Green Bay. He's a bit more blockish than Tucker Kraft. And Tucker Kraft's like yards after the catch. His yak has been phenomenal for the Packers, but Musgrave, keep an eye on him. Badgley on the Colts is probably the only kicker that you can probably, if you want to downgrade, but at the moment, the kicking situation is just so hard to predict week on week. Like Kaimi Fairbairn, you feel good about the Texans at home a lot of the time. Aubrey missed a 68-yarder that would have really helped his score as well, but Anyway, and defense special teams this week. The Browns play the Jets. I love this one. 8.3 mil for the Browns. Their break-even is minus 23, and they're playing the Jets, who just had a bye, came off their first win of the season, but the Browns' defense is still terrifying. Tampa Bay play the Pats this week as well. Break-even a minus 18 at 9.2 mil, but the Pats, look, that game's going to be pretty hard to judge. The Pats could just be out there slinging it. We know that Drake May loves to, so that might be a little bit riskier. There's another great one, though. Baltimore versus Minnesota. JJ McCarthy. The break-even is minus 11 for the Baltimore Ravens defense special teams. They're at 5 mil. The Ravens started the year off so badly. I think we said at the start of the year, either here or on NFL Straya, they'll round into form halfway through the season. They'll be fine. That's kind of what's happening. But they did play the Miami Dolphins last week, so it's a bit hard to judge. JJ McCarthy's looked solid, but this will be a big test against the Ravens. But the Ravens one, if you want to save a bit of cash at 5 mil, break even at minus 11, don't mind that. So with all this in mind, what are our trades and trade targets for Week 10 looking like? Well, we've got Kansas City on a bye, Cincinnati on a bye, Dallas on a bye, and Tennessee on a bye. Tennessee's not so much of a problem. But KC, there goes Kelsey, Rice, Xavier Worthy if you've got him. Cincinnati, obviously, there goes Chase and Higgins, Chase Brown. And Dallas, that's Dak. It's CeeDee Lamb. It's Pickens. It's Javonte Williams. So some big names out. We'll have to fill some holes. It does bring up the idea of so almost team by team. Dallas, is it time to cut bait on Dak Prescott? George Pickens, now that CeeDee Lamb is back, isn't the clear-cut wide receiver one. CeeDee Lamb, they've basically just, it feels like it's thrown a bit of a spanner into their works, unfortunately, having a healthy wide receiver room. So I'm probably okay, and I'll talk about this in a second. Like the Dak situation, I mean, has the Raiders after the bye. Can you hold on to him for 2 more weeks? Maybe. Can we just get whoever's on our bench, slot them in, see how we go? Possibly. But I mean, outside of this, you've got other questions like Tyler Warren, if you want to go from Tyler Warren to Brock Bowers. How do you feel about that? They're pretty close dollars-wise, but, I mean, Brock Bowers has got Geno Smith throwing to him. Danny Dimes, there's a lot of weapons on that Indiana Colts team. They go to Germany this week, as I mentioned. So now you have this strange situation of all right, well, who are we trusting? So Tyler Warren's owned by 57.5% of coaches. Scored 10 points this week. He is still at an average of 21, but I believe in terms of total points, he's 4th overall. So with Tucker Kraft going down, if you've got him, that's 12.5% of coaches. The Brock Bowers switch over seems pretty obvious. Tyler Warren, if there's no desperate need to move on from him, he does play Atlanta. They did a pretty good job this week defensively, but they're on the road again. I just don't know. I'd probably keep Warren. But if you want to jump on a Bowers while he's still cheap-ish, why not? Danny Dimes, I don't know, looking a little bit dicey this week. He turned into the Danny Dimes pumpkin that we don't want. And going up against Atlanta as well, it's a bit of a weird one. In terms of other ones that are like Patrick Mahomes, if you want to move a sideways trade for him, I think, look, as the best scoring QB so far in SuperCoach, to Lamar is probably an interesting one. Josh Allen has obviously got a really great matchup this week, so I think that's kind of the one, right? The biggest thing is with the teams on buys, we've probably got a bit of coverage. Chase, obviously on a buy as well. Higgins on a buy. I don't know. I'd sort of just be trying to do as little as I can with heading into week 10. We've got buys all the way through week 14 before we're hitting the actual playoffs and stuff. So I would sort of just hesitate with just going gung-ho on all sorts of trades. But if you're going to, remember to play the schedule, right? Denver get the Raiders this week. RJ Harvey, Brock Bowers, how does he go against that Broncos secondary? Probably not too bad. He just looked that good, but I don't know. Is Geno Smith going to be able to get him the ball? Carolina and the Saints play each other. Cleveland get the Jets, but I mean, that could be just a big Judkins game. They've traded away a whole big part of their defense already, the Jets, and they stink. So maybe a good Quinton Judkins spot. Dallas and the Bengals on a bye really sort of limits our options. But I think the big one obviously is Detroit playing Washington. Looked like a shell of themselves this week. Got dominated by Seattle. So that's Gibbs, that's Amon-Ra, that's Sam Laporta, might have even Goff, Jamison Williams, bit of JMO in there. Montgomery, if you've got him sort of floating around in draft. But I love Gibbs this week. So my trades this week, I think in terms of like the actual targets that you should be looking at, it is the likes of Bowers. My big one is probably targeting Drake May on the Pats, because if we are moving on from a QB, if you had Jayden Daniels, if you've got Dak, Drake May now plays Tampa Bay this week, but then the Jets, Cincy, and the Giants. That feels like an absolute murderer's row of being able to put up some pretty awesome scores. Caleb Williams has got the Giants, then he has Minnesota, who did just a job on Jared Goff and the Lions this week. And then he's got Pittsburgh as well, who really just completely obliterated Danny Dimes. Josh Allen has Miami this week, then he has Tampa Bay, but then he has Houston. Josh Allen is that good, it might not matter. I don't know. So I feel like Drake May is probably the obvious target. Caleb's a pretty good one. So Brock Bowers is the obvious standout tight end target that we should be getting in. And in terms of the actual sort of running backs and how we're feeling about some of these guys, I mean, Jonathan Taylor still scoring 13 points this week. He's got such a big bank behind him that he still went up 50K, which is crazy. McCaffrey is just in his absolute pomp right now at 24 mil. Bijan at 20. Slight nice discount there. They now play the Colts over in Germany. Colts, look, they gave up plenty to Warren. I don't mind Bijan this week too, just saying. But Josh Jacobs plays against the Eagles, a bit of a rough one. James Cook is the interesting one, I think, for this week as well in terms of RBs. 18.3 mil. They play Miami. I've sort of talked about how they absolutely get carved up on the ground. It's not a bad one. So I think get him in though. Amon-Ra and Brown going up against the Washington defense. You think about Gibbs going up against that defense as well. If you don't have Jahmyr Gibbs, he's at 19.2 mil. A little bit of a discount after an 8-point week this week. He is still absolutely fantastic. And even Saquon, he's now down to 15.4 mil. Close to Gentian price, close to Cam Scatterbowen price. DeAndre Swift, if you want to jump off him, he was at 17.1 mil. You can actually go down to Barkley and save 2 mil. So outside of that, we've got a few captain ideas. Look, before we do that, my trades, look, I'll probably move on from Dak. I don't feel wildly confident enough in JJ McCarthy for a 1-week coverage off that bench when I could probably try to get Drake May in because I feel like he might have some success against Tampa Bay. And then that run of Jets, Cincy, and Giants is just almost too appealing to not have him in now. And trying to get to Bowers, I guess, from either Warren or Freiermuth is probably where I'm going to go. So those will probably be my trades by this week, but you got to check out the Thursday night SuperCoach team reveal that we'll release through NFL Straya as well. So check that all out. In terms of captains, though, look, Jonathan Taylor versus Atlanta in Germany is an interesting one. You can run on Atlanta. The Pats did. 124.4 yards per game. Not a bad one there. And Bijan, look, Indy allowed the 4th fewest yards per game on the ground, but Jaylen Warren did get in the end zone a couple of times. So Bijan looks pretty good. It's pretty interesting they're playing against each other. So, I don't know, you can throw the VC on one of them and hope for the best, I guess. I'd probably do that into Gibbs versus Washington. I've got Gibbs on my team. The Commanders allowed, I think, 124 yards on the ground, and the 11th most, which is the 11th most as well, 7 touchdowns. The 3rd most air yards as well for this Commanders team. So we know that Gibbs gets used in the passing game, very similar to Bijan. Don't mind Gibbs as my captain this week. Maybe Drake May against Tampa Bay, but JT against Atlanta and Germany is probably an interesting one. Josh Allen versus Miami, if you've got him, that's probably a very big, obvious standout candidate, considering it's the 3rd worst rushing defense in the NFL right now. 10 touchdowns they've allowed, 145 yards per game. He and James Cook should have a just field day against Miami. The passing D is the 8th best, the Dolphins. But, I mean, a lot of Josh Allen's value will come from on the ground, jumping in for a touchdown or two, as well as a bit of passing, a little bit of rushing, but there you go. So Jonathan Taylor's probably the VC for me. Josh Allen against Miami, though, if you've got him, I'd throw the VC onto him as well and just sort of see how he goes. With a couple of buys, so we can do a bit of looping for your captaincy. What do you reckon? Sound good? All right. Let us know how you went, how it's all going. Feeling pretty good at 431 overall. Want to have a big week this week. I mean, I guess the last little thing as well, Puka, he was a little bit limited with Mike having the captaincy on him this week. He had 95 yards, looked really, really good, but then fell on the ball and hurt his ribs. Hopefully he's all right for this week. If he isn't, then we've got some pretty big decisions to make. I might move on from Tet McMillan, who's still on my field this week as coverage for Pickens and for Chase. I didn't really want to move on from him, but here we are. But Carolina do play the Saints this week, so it's not a bad matchup for Tet. But if Puka, just need to keep an eye on him, so we're actually making sure that he's playing. So anyway, Monongai, he's a good look as well. If Swift's no go, keep an eye out for all of the rest of the sort of roster changes and stuff like that after all these trades this week too. Just head on a swivel. This is where the rubber meets the road. So that's it. Week 9 wrap done. Let's do it. Week 10 preview in the bag. That's Jim Does SuperCoach. Check us out across all the socials, of course. Twitter, IG, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. Get around NFL Straya and NBA Straya. This is Jim Does SuperCoach, NFL SuperCoach. Week 9 done. Happy SuperCoaching.